Our next session is on the future of higher education in India. And the speakers are Dr. Priti Bajaj. She's the Vice Chancellor, Galgotias University, Greater Noida. She's on the way, and she should be here in another 5 or 7 minutes. Professor Surya Prasad Rao Suvaru, Director, Sharda University, Greater Noida. I'll request sir to please come to the stage. Dr. A. Garg, Director, KIET Group of Institutions. Sir, please come. Mr. Raghav Gupta, MD and Director, India and APAC, Coursera. Sir, Mr. Gupta? Okay. He should be just joining us, Mr. Gupta. Mr. Raghav Gupta, MD, Director, India and APAC, Coursera. I would request sir to please come to the stage. Okay. Dr. Priti Bajaj, Vice Chancellor, Galgotia University, Greater Noida. Ma'am, please kindly come to the stage. Dr. Devinder Narang, sir is Director, Jaipuria University. Jaipuria Institute, Ghaziabad. Sorry. And Garima Pant, Ms. Garima Pant, she's our Assistant Editor for Digital Learning. Please, Garima. Thank you.
Thank you.
You can start.
Welcome to all the panelists. And the session is on the future of higher education in India. It's a very vast topic that we are focusing on. And ma'am, I'd like to begin with you. If you could, let us know how is your institution delivering the global learning experiences that are unique and best in class? Can you repeat the second part? Global learning experiences that are unique and best in class.
Okay. So thank you. I would say the university is very young. We started with, just 10 years back. And since then, day one, we started with outcome-based education in true sense. Probably in India, we started with mostly outcome-based education, mostly in engineering programs. But from day one, since 2011, for whether it is engineering or the non-engineering programs like might be nursing, liberal education, medical and allied sciences, paramedical. So everywhere we have ensured that we follow the Bloom's taxonomy. It's all 4 parameters of outcome-based education, whether it is outcome-based curriculum, outcome-based teaching learning, outcome-based assessment especially, and outcome-based accreditation. So we follow that in true sense. So that's one. Second, it's all about digital learning. So when we talk about digital learning, LMS is being followed long back, quite early. And apart from LMS, now COVID has also given us many tools. So that's being used. Virtual labs, in addition to that, and many other simulators which we have for aviation or for other programs. So a lot of digital learning which is happening now. And COVID has opened all the doors for global learning. So that's it right now.
Right.
Thank you.
Right. Dr. Narang, if you would like to add on to this.
No, because of the COVID, there are a lot of disruptions happened, in last almost 2 years. So if we talk, 2 years back, the future of education, we could have discussed, different. But after, 2 years, there are many changes has been taken place, and because of circumstances, we are, forced to do or, incorporate many things, whether it's a hybrid, teaching and learning, whether it's a, total digital transformation. So, these things are, coming, is the future. And also, NEP was, in between introduced. and also this disruption also, back to the NEP in a, to see it in different perspective. So, yes, the future is, coming with the lot of technology inventions and coming with the experience, which is, will give you lot many exposures. Earlier we were, talking about the traditional classroom, teaching learning, but now the exposure is, to have lot many information. When you're opening the mail in the morning, there are so many, knowledge is in front of you, and now you are, always afraid which, link I have to open or which link I have to, not to. So there are lot many things which are, enforcing you to experience the new thing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Gupta, if I may ask you, as sir has mentioned, there are a lot of changes in the education sector post-COVID. So looking at from a tech perspective, if you could talk about, how did the pandemic reshape the education sector? And of course, across the business and tech domain, if you could elaborate a bit on your offerings also, what is the kind of offerings that you were made to give in these times, in these testing times?
Yeah, absolutely. And I must say, firstly, just to be at an in-person event is special again. I was saying to Dr. Bajaj, we've met a few times on Zoom, and this is the first time we are meeting in person. She's much taller in person than she's on Zoom, so it's really good to see some of these things in person. Thank you to your organization for organizing this event. I think before we talk higher education, I always find it a little helpful to mention what's happening in industry. Because obviously all the academic leaders here are getting their students ready for life, for careers, and for their first jobs. We have seen massive changes happening in industry, and sometimes because we're in the middle of change, it's a little hard to appreciate the quantum of change that is happening. We work with one of the largest banks in India, and I was talking to the CHR of the bank, and she said, look, we have now become a technology company that works in finance. And all of us have probably read this statement from the CEO of Goldman Sachs 5 years ago, where the CEO had said, we are a technology company that also works in finance. And we are hearing similar themes from automotive companies. We are hearing similar themes from retail companies where e-commerce is becoming increasingly large and so on. And I think it's helpful to call out that for industry, lots of traditional roles have gone out of the picture. Lots of jobs are no longer there. Lots of digital, lots of data has become increasingly important. And this is not just for computer science, this is not just for electronics, this is true for automotive, this is true for electrical, this is true for management. We are finding that a lot of international universities are now focusing on launching management programs which have significant technology component in them. Because many years ago when I did my MBA, the hottest jobs were in consulting and in investment banking. Today, the hottest jobs are in the technology space. People want to come and work with Amazon, they want to work with Google, they want to work with Coursera. These are the hottest jobs in the market. And to be a management student who does not understand technology does not work. So I think the future of industry is very actively shaping the future of higher education. And what we've seen on the Coursera platform is that people are coming to learn skills of the future. So I was looking at some of our data, and the top 3-4 things that people are learning on Coursera. Firstly, the first thing that people are learning on Coursera is learning how to learn. Just a fundamental topic of learning how to learn. And I know Dr. Garg's institution also has a lot of students who are learning this particular topic. The second thing that people are learning on Coursera is the science of well-being. And the pandemic has made us aware about our own personal well-being. You can't take your life for granted, right? All of us have seen some of the other COVID-related tragedy in our extended circles and so on and so forth. And then what people are learning thirdly is topics like Python, topics like artificial intelligence, topics like data science. And so I think the fact that industry is changing to digital means that a lot of higher education and what we need to be providing to students is going to be a combination of digital and human skills. Learning how to learn and science of well-being are human skills, while Python and artificial intelligence and data science are obviously skills related to digital. And I think that's where we probably need to head a little bit, is my sense.
Right, thank you. It's interesting you mentioned that Dr. Garg's organization is actually, learning to learn, using this process. So if you could probably, tell us from a user perspective, how the experience has been, and of course, what is the role platforms like Coursera have played in these times?
Yeah, thank you. Let me just briefly introduce my institution because I'm going to talk in that perspective itself. We are KIT group of institutions located in Delhi, NCR, Ghaziabad, having close to about 6,500 students, having 4 schools basically, the biggest being the School of Engineering, followed by Pharmacy, Management and Computer Applications. Now, we had a wonderful experience. I must say that on the lighter side, if I have to give an award, the Best Teacher Award, say in last 1.5 years, and then I think I'll give the award to the Corona. Because the Corona has taught us what probably we could have taken a decade to learn. So that would be my first point today. Now, as far as the learnings, I must say that we had learned to go for a self-paced learning through MOOC. I think this is one of the biggest contributions. We barely used MOOC. It was just the NPTEL. But then during this pandemic, we knew how to use courses on the platforms like Coursera. Like in my institutions, having 6,000 students, in fact, I was amazed that there were 34,000 registrations by the students. They had registered themselves on the courses, though they did not complete because students are students, and they could complete only 11,000 certifications, but that itself is a huge number. And that I find is a great learning. Now that is having a bearing on, because they have now used to learning on an online mode to have the experience of a self-paced learning. Now even after the pandemic is nearly over, now the students are used to learning on this mode. And I'm very happy to share that we have had a collaboration with Coursera, and we are running the minor specialization programs now. Now that is what I feel is the need of the hour. For example, a student, if he's keen to do computer science, engineering, but he doesn't get admission, he's pursuing his mechanical engineering or civil engineering, but then he wants to pursue a course, say for example, he wants to work in an area of machine learning or integrated green energy solutions, smart societies. Now, Coursera gives an opportunity to attend this particular minor specialization along with the curriculum or a particular course what he or she is doing. Now, that's a beautiful opportunity, and a lot of our students, I remember about 400 of our students, they are learning this manner to attend the minor specialization. So I think the whole ambit has been changed in this period. And the new normal, what is there in future, that the students are not satisfied with what is being given in the classroom. They are looking for things beyond. And not only the technology, I think in terms of the soft skills also, in terms of creative thinking, and in terms of a lot of other courses, those courses are also available on this platform. So I think overall, it has been a very, very fantastic experience for our institution.
Right, thank you. It's interesting you mentioned that, there has to be a mix of, both kinds of learning. And that brings to my next question to Professor Rao about, blended learning. It seems to be the way forward that we're looking at. So what does it mean for the educators, and what does it mean for students and for the institutes, and how should, be prepared, one should prepare for it, and what does it look like in the future?
Madam, you have tapped it rightly, because friends, before giving my inputs, I would like to throw some light on 3 major unexpected things that we come across recently, and we may come across in future also. Number 1, we should expect the unexpected. Another pandemic, a sharp economic downturn, a complex political turn to the right or left or something else, and altogether likely to occur with unpredictable implications. That is number 1 concern. Second concern is threats to the existing institutions hidden all around us. Just a few include certificates, certifications, alternate credentials, private universities and corporations with substantial brand names that could certainly disclose and dislocate the higher education landscape. The third concern is all reforms have unanticipated, unexpected, and often undesirable consequences. I think everyone must have seen that Cobra effect, the publications. You know, every institute is after publications, number of publications, research. But over a period of time, the predatory journals are, you know, growing like anything, and people who have published by paying money and false trap, they are now not getting any recognition, and that in the reverse way it is happening. Instead of goodwill, the reputation of the faculty is going down. That is, you know, never expected, but it's happening. I think recently the Dutch and Chinese also started de-recognizing the publications and focusing on the patents. We need to focus on patents and then publications and then taking that into startup ideas. That is my thing. And before closing this thing, I'll come back to blended learning. Because I have done 12 certifications recently from Coursera. 2 courses which Dr. Raghav mentioned, I also in the same, the science of well-being and also the deep learning. Though I'm not an engineering graduate, but I did my Coursera certification in deep learning also. And the other areas of concern for the future of higher education in the country is, number one, the economics of traditional colleges. And traditional collegiate education will become even more difficult than that are today, number one. Number two, the competition within the post-secondary education marketplace is likely to intensify. Like, you know, in the schools only they are teaching artificial intelligence, machine learning, coding, etc. What do they learn when they come to college, a university? That is the concern. And third one, the affordability of going for higher education is very, very, difficult. Even recently, one of my students has done, worked for 3 years in the IT industry and getting 40 lakhs package per annum. And he wanted to go to IIM Bangalore for executive education. When he got a seat and he was asking me, sir, I'm expected to pay around 30 lakhs. Is it worth paying? Because 1 year he has to pay 30 lakhs and he has to forego 40 lakhs. The cost of education is 70 lakhs. So is it worth going for higher education in this particular dimension? That is another concern. And the last concern, of course, is pressures for equity will not only persist, but strengthen. Friends, equality is every student should have the same access. But equity is recognizing the different student needs with different, actions that require to reach their goals. These are the concerns. And coming back to Madam's answer, blended learning is the only way most of the students can get the certifications. And another example, very live example, because my students, keep very much connected with me. They are saying they are working in Tech Mahindra in the quality check, what you call, testing. And when they go for next job, they are asking for automation of the testing, manual testing to automation testing. And when they say they have done, what is the proof? Where is that certificate? Why do they get certificate when they work? So everybody is now expected to acquire certifications that they have not only knowledge, expertise, but also knowledge, know-how. They are very good in do-how, but they also should claim that they have know-how. So know-how and do-how is possible only with blended learning. Thank you, madam.
Thank you. Ma'am, if I can ask you to probably, share your thoughts on this.
Thank you. So, as we all have experience, blended learning is going to be the future. But how? So, I would say we are looking at only one thing, how the teaching would happen in the classroom. And we are calling that to be a blended learning. So, it is going to be online plus offline. But according to me, if we are going to focus on, blended learning for every course, whether it is offline or online. So for every course, if we are teaching, it would have a skill related to that. It means, again, I would like to expand. I'm teaching one course and then some lab is associated with it I'm giving some research to my students, whether it is online or offline, I would call it to be purely blended mode. So in that case, the complete curriculum, if I have 100%, that is going to be, if 40% supported with a blended learning, is going to be excellent, a perfect combination. And COVID has opened that door. Probably, I would say, in India, we haven't seen the skills so far. The very few students were taking up the skills, and these 2 years have given us ample opportunity, and everybody, like if just now sir has said, so maybe I'm not from a particular domain, so actual interdisciplinary learning is also taking place. I am learning the courses which are available at my doorstep, at my fingertip, and from the domain which I want, the time I want. So that's going to be, to support my concepts, I'm learning from anything and everything which is available near to me. And then in addition to that, the platform like Coursera, so that is giving me additional hand, wherein I'm supporting my knowledge with the skill and the advanced learning and the notes and the knowledge which is being acquired at their end after doing due diligence and learning from best of best universities. So that's the perfect, so that I would call it as an, blended learning, wherein I'm supporting for everything which I'm learning in a classroom with number of tools, maybe online, maybe offline. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, if you'd
Can
like to
I-
add some. Yeah, sure, sir, please.
Dr. Bajaj spoke about how to do blended learning. Maybe I can share a little bit about why to do blended learning as well. And as we work with over 1,000 institutions in the country, what we are finding is that the reason institutions are adopting blended learning is one, like I said, because industry is changing very rapidly. The kind of careers that students want to pursue are also changing and they're becoming exciting. So for example, if I'm an MBA student and I want to work in fintech, I must learn blockchain, I must learn cryptocurrency. And if my institution does not have faculty for blockchain, for cryptocurrency, then blended learning can provide that course to say, look, come and take this course online. So that's one of the areas. Similarly, today, if I'm an engineering student studying, computer science, chances are that I need to specialize in machine learning, I need to specialize in artificial intelligence. And that's a second area where a lot of institutions are adopting blended learning. We are also seeing that institutions have adopted blended learning just with the core purpose of upgrading their curricula with the latest technology as well. And when we work with companies in the technology space, the pace at which technology is changing is mind-boggling. Even companies, leading companies in the country are training their employees over and over again to be able to keep pace with the change of technology. And traditionally, it has taken longer for higher education to change curricula, to bring the latest technology to the curriculum. And I think that's a second, or I should say the third purpose that institutions are adopting blended learning. And traditionally, we've all known that online learning is MOOCs, like Dr. Garg also spoke about. But what we've also seen is that in today's world, for most students, being able to learn a digital tool for their job is important. If you are a BCom student, if you want to go and work in accounting, there are certain tools that you need to use. If you are a marketing student who wants to work in digital marketing, you need to learn Canva, you need to learn other tools. And what online learning and Coursera is enabling this as well is to learn the theory, but also the actual hands-on piece of a digital skill. Of course, you can't learn a physical skill online, but you can learn a digital skill online. And that is also why I think institutions are adopting blended learning that we've seen.
Right, sir. Dr. Narang, would you like?
I would like to add on the reason which you have said, why to go for blended learning, one more. If I have to deal with masses, and in that case, to bring the uniformity, so probably if I'm having 50 teachers for, for problem solving, there may not be a uniformity. One could be a best, or the set of faculties could be best. But then if I need to have that uniformity, so I can choose a best course in problem solving, and that can be given to everyone. so that there would be uniform teaching which would take place. Learning, of course, would be varying, but then at least teaching could be uniform.
Right,
Thank
right.
you.
So, Dr. Narang, if you would like to share your thoughts on blended learning.
Yeah, in fact, today we are talking about the blended learning because of the COVID, and in fact, if given the opportunity, rather, in coming days, we'll go with the blending learning to the affirmative learning. Why I'm saying, even what we are doing in our college, the courses which are being taught in the classroom and which are in their curriculum, we also, advising to our students, they should go onto the online platforms and pick those specialized courses which we are talking right now, whether it's on the MOOCs or on the Coursera or NPTEL. So, the advantage is the courses on these platforms, they are, taught by the different expert, industry expert, as well as, from the different country and the region. And, they are coming with the different perspective. So one thing which is, being taught in the classroom, and one thing is which another type, the knowledge, value addition in the knowledge is coming from the different tutor or the expert from the industry. So that is, affirm the, the content and the knowledge of the student. So this is really very good. And, after the COVID, I know the Coursera had, made a tie-up with the rather given the opportunity to all the countries to, and they made the courses free to all students. And that is a very good gesture they have made. And the student really learned in this period. Because of the COVID, they only, went to the online platform and picked a lot many courses. And this is the reason many students has made number of courses, and as Mr. Garg has said, 11,000 courses has been completed. And if you count the number of the whole country, there is a, you'll find crores of the degree, the student has done in this period. So really, this is the future which is coming on. And maybe we today talking blended, and maybe, in another 7 years is completely digital learning. And then maybe you will find the school colleges online only. So, thank you.
So, Dr. Garg wants to add something here.
Yeah, thank you very much once again. See, I wanted to share one practice which we have adopted, and we found it to be very successful. This is about implementation and utilization of the learning management system. That is very, very important for all the institutions. And then we used the open software Moodle. And we worked in a manner that, for example, a subject is there. It has got few units, and each unit has got few topics. So topic-wise, we have uploaded the material onto the Moodle. Now, under a single click, under a single window, as far as student is concerned, he has got the lecture notes of the faculty, he has got the concerned Coursera course, he has got the concerned NPTEL, the virtual labs in case they have been developed by the institution or by the Ministry of Education, e-Pathshala, and any animation, everything is available along with the link to attend the class for that particular subject. Now, this has created a life, very, very comfortable life for the student. Now, having learned this, we thought how to make use of this as a blended learning model. Because initially, in the initial periods of the pandemic, all the faculty members, they were going with a traditional way of, teaching in the online manner. It was as if they are delivering a class in a physical mode. But that is not the purpose of online learning. In the blended learning, what we subsequently migrated to, not successfully completely, but in the process, we are asking the students, since the data is already there, material is already there, we are asking students to prepare themselves before attending the class. Visit that particular unit, visit that particular lecture, and come in the class for a discussion, thereby working on the higher order thinking skills. That's what Dr. Preeti Bajaj mentioned about the Bloom's taxonomy. Now the class has to upgrade itself to a two-way communication. That will lead to the actual learning, not the one-way communication. Because students should not be coming to the class only for the sake of attendance. They should come to the class to gain the information, the knowledge, the learning. So that is one of the ways I think the blended learning should be done that manner. Another thing I think what very successfully all of us have experienced, but I just wanted to mention, The connect with the students, for example, the connect of the faculty mentors with the student is now on the 24/7 basis. You need not depend, you need not to have a period from 9 to 5. You know, you can connect with the students. You can connect with the parents. In fact, we had a number of meetings with the parents, and we found that along with the students, even the parents have become the tech savvy during this period. They are also comfortable in joining online. So that is another way of, I say, blended learning. Now, in fact, we were very happy once we saw that during the examinations, we requested the parents to become the proctors of their students, because there can't be a better proctor than their own parents. And they found that the successful completion and successful evaluation of a lot of, at least the invigilation part was done very, very successfully. So these are some of my thoughts on the blended learning.
Right, thank you. I'd like to open this question to all the panelists, and beginning from Mr. Gupta, from you. The shelf life of skills is reducing fast, and this actually necessitates the need for a lifelong learning. So how do you see this demand getting addressed of lifelong learning?
Yeah, so we say this often actually based on a lot of the research that we are seeing on Coursera, that a lot of the jobs of the future have some digital element to them, but the skills to be able to do digital jobs are a combination of digital and human skills. And I'll give you a little bit of data point here. In 2019, there are crores of working professionals who come on the Coursera platform, and we looked at what the top 10 things were that they were learning. And they were learning things like Python, they were learning things like machine learning, they were learning digital marketing, business strategy, supply chain, topics like that. And then in 2020, when the pandemic hit, it completely changed. People went to learning things like communication, things like strategy, things like meditation, mindfulness, gratitude, and topics like that, personal wellness, topics like that. So we saw that when the pandemic hit, the need for human skills completely went up. And if you look at research coming out of the World Economic Forum and other bodies, they talk about how the future is going to be a combination of technology-driven skills, but also very importantly, human skills. So what we've all known for many years, critical thinking, problem solving, working in teams, leadership, are going to be skills of the future that we will continue to need. Of course, how do you work virtually, how do you work with teams that you never meet in person is also going to be the skill that professionals are like us are building. And at the same time, even in non-technical jobs, a basic understanding of technology is going to be important. We work with an MBA school in Delhi, and the director was telling me that they've made Python programming mandatory for semester 1 students, because like Excel is a base skill today for management professionals, tomorrow Python will be a base skill for management professionals as well. So I think definitely, we are seeing this. At the same time, for all of us as working professionals, lifelong learning does not come naturally. Nobody wants to be a natural. I haven't met too many naturally born lifelong learners. It's a little bit like going to the gym. If you want to build your muscles, you need to go and work out for 6 months. And similarly, lifelong learning in companies as working professionals takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of discipline, and it takes a lot of motivation. Unless there's no motivation, intrinsic motivation, it does not happen. So I know that companies are putting in a lot of work around creating the intrinsic motivation for people to become lifelong learners. And I think that's important. We work with a company called Tata Communications, and they used to have about 40 hours of learning per year that their employees would do. But during the pandemic, that 40 became 100 hours of learning because the need for learning went up. So it is happening, but it's also important to call out that lifelong learning is not that easy for people to build as a skill.
Right, thank you. Dr. Rao, yes.
Madam, actually, the blended learning is giving a scope for, fulfilled learning, because they can get, 40 hours, 16 hours, 12 hours, 16 hours, 8 hours courses also there in Coursera. After, while spending 8 hours, they'll get a certificate. That gives a lot of satisfaction. Wow, I got it, because I'm experienced. I did my, around 14 courses from Coursera during last year, during pandemic. The work is completely online, no offline classes that time. So we had enough time to spend, learn, sometimes unlearn, and we relearned also. And 2 courses I came across very useful for every teacher from Coursera, because I did my courses from Coursera platform. That's why I'm saying, number 1 is university teaching, number 2 is virtual teaching. They both, I think, California University offering those courses, and that will be very much useful for every one of us because we are all, most of us are teachers. And it will help us to deliver better in the days, in the classes when we deliver online. Because hybrid learning is different from blended learning. Blended learning, we mix so many other components, flipped model or case-based or project-based, experiential learning and team project. So many things are clubbed, both synchronous and asynchronous, and that is going to happen. So blended learning is the way, ultimate goal, but it is not completely away from the regular classes, regular teaching or regular learning. That's why they are all part of the learning process. That's why most of the companies or students are talking about as LMS, learning management systems, not teaching management systems. Nobody is bothered about teaching management. Everyone is bothered about learning management, how learnings are being maximized and how the learnings are evaluated, where the technologies become an integral part, not only for delivery, and also for proctoring and giving unbiased opinion about the learning outcomes. That's why AI is being used to assess, and evaluation is a negative term. We don't want to say that we are evaluating your performance. We are assessing your performance. So assessment is replaced by evaluation, and blended learning is replaced by the hybrid learning, and long courses are replaced by short-term courses, short duration courses, or one credit, 2 credit courses like that. So that is going to happen in future,
Right,
mostly.
right. Thank you, thank you. Sir, would you like to add?
Yeah, thank you. To my mind, the lifelong learning is going to be the new normal now. Now, I would like to connect the National Education Policy 2020 also with this. In this academic bank of credits, ABC, multiple entry, multiple exit. Now, that is going to be very, very popular because, with the nuclear families now and the lot of responsibilities, domestic as well as the, the responsibility to grow yourself. So I think the students would like to work on acquire education on a part-time basis, pick up a job, and then acquire degrees or certifications on a part-time basis. That is going to be the new normal. And now in that, the lifelong learning is going to be very, very important. First is to get the job, to get the higher jobs for the higher certifications, and also then to make themselves market ready at all times. Because the way the technology is changing, the shelf life is reducing, you need to be market ready at all times. So I think that is going to be the new normal. You work and then you, along with you enhance your skills. Now in this, the one change is from the industry, what Mr. Raghav mentioned. Another change I think which needs to be done is by the institutions themselves. In terms of the policy, we have talked about the national education policy and the changes. And another important thing is probably the institution have to design their own modules to commensurate this kind of a learning. I feel that there would be a few years down the line, there may be a subscription model where there is some amount which is paid by the student every year, and then he can avail all the services which are being offered by a university. That may happen. He can come and join at his own pace and will, some MOOC courses or maybe some online courses in the blended mode. All that probably is going to happen in future.
Right. Thank you. Ma'am, yes, ma'am, please.
Coming to lifelong learning, we did one experiment. For past 6 years, I'm doing one experiment. Some of the courses of liberal learning and creative learning are being introduced. That gives you, and those are very correct as on today, the courses on creativity, because if the student along with his core, if he's learning, so it's also, he's good at guitar. So if he goes for that, the passion gives, it's a kind of meditation. Then a small course on yoga, power yoga, it's not because it is being given in NEP, but we did this experiment, and then CII have also done a small experiment which gives a natural healing. Apart from that, in India, the T model is going to be very, very popular now, which everybody of us, we have spoken. The T model will give breadth of courses, short courses, 1 credit, 2 credit, not even 3 and 4, and forget about 5. And then the depth, so one who has interest, passion, or requirement of the job or internship or his skill, though some particular skills are required, he will go in deep. So that T model is going to be, first experiment in India was done in IIT Hyderabad, and then many have takers. I have done that experiment, and that model works very well. The challenge is only one, you have this lifelong learning course, doesn't matter whatever skills you introduce, but then these skills are very temporary. The moment so it's very volatile. I'm learning today and then tomorrow I'll forget. So I need to learn that. Lifelong learning skills would help if you have some kind of training during your 2 years, 3 years. Probably students would be having that habit to learn and to practice and to follow. That challenge would come even in professionals. So we need to have those incentives, prizes, medal within the system so that the faculties are motivated and inclined. So it's both way.
Right,
That's it. Thank you.
Dr. Nath.
Yeah, in fact, lifelong learning is the only, way to being relevant. Otherwise, you'll be vanish or irrelevant. As the transformation is, taking place so fast, technology is coming so fast, there are a lot of invention and innovation is going on. So the new skills is coming every day by day, or as, in a decade, generation is changed. Rather, in half of the decade, the skills pattern and the job related to it is being changed. So it's always, better once you pass out from the school, but, keep learning. We always, teaching to our, student that every day, is a, you should have a new learning. Otherwise, you will be, on the back seat. And in fact, what we are doing in our college also, those students, those alumni of our college, those who have, passed out so many years back. So we are calling, during in the new program. And we are teaching them the new skills, without any charge. And, we are, because they are coming to their alma mater, and we are giving the new skills which are relevant in today's. And even they are approaching to us, whether you are, starting a new course or new, skill set. So definitely we are, giving back to them so that they always be, upgrade themselves. So it's always relevant to upgrade yourself, to, learn a new skills every day.
Thank you. Just to sum up now then, if I can have a takeaway message from all the panelists, just a quick takeaway from you, sir, beginning from Dr. Garg, if you can, So the future of higher education, your quick takeaway.
Right. Thank you. See, future of higher education, to my mind, is going to be the effective, in phase 1, going to be the effective implementation of national education policy in letter and spirit. Now, why I say that? Because the whole focus is on having a multidisciplinary education which is research oriented. Now, that is what we want. That is what needs to be done. ABC and internationalization of education, all these are the components of it. Now, once we do that, to my mind, what should be done for the future is that we need to create a personalized learning environment in the educational institutions, using the role of artificial intelligence. Now, ideally, we should have a learning path for all the students which is made as per the learning capability of the student, as per his interest and as per his personality attributes. If we could do that, for example, the university curriculum is there, his research interest is something else. Now, they are mapped into an artificial intelligence tool, and depending on his capability, the tool kind of entire learning process is customized as per that. That is what should happen. That is what is the need of the hour and for the future. Now, along with this, Dr. Rao brought out a very relevant point, and I feel that there needs to be more discussion on that, is the skill development for the faculty members. It's all that we need to do this for the student, but then who's going to do it? It has to be done by the faculty member only. Now, focus of us onto the faculty member needs to be enhanced. In fact, I'm tempted with an idea, in case it is possible, to have a faculty accreditations. We are talking of the accreditations of the institutions. Why can't we have a kind of a different baskets and we say this faculty is B, B plus, B plus plus, A plus plus. Why not? And make a kind of a yardstick for that. And that would be a fair competition. And the set of faculty members who meet a particular criteria, they would be equipped to take on the students learning on the AI model, as far as the advanced learning is concerned. So that needs to be done. Along with the faculty training, I feel one of the ways, because most of the faculty, they pick up their career right in the beginning, and they are not exposed to the industry at all. They are not aware about the industry best practices. So I think it would be a good idea to have a faculty internships also.
Right, sir. Right,
So
right.
these are probably some of the thoughts that we need to work on that.
So,
Thank you.
Professor Rao, your quick takeaway.
Yeah, 1 minute only. I don't take much time. Friends, the future is going to be the GYAN providers number will come down. Nowadays, every student after getting job for 3 years, they work there and come back to institute and say, sir, there is large gap between what you are being taught and what you are teaching here and what we are doing there. There is always gap, otherwise industry cannot grow. Industry should grow with innovations. Otherwise they cannot find business. That is their job. Our job is to prepare the students for the future. We are not going to make them everybody is an IT professional or a banking professional or insurance professional or a digital technologist. We are going to provide them the education for future. We should prepare them for the future. And of course, the NEP also provides a space. Up to 40% they can do online courses. They can earn their 40% of their degree through online courses. Choice is given. Choice-based credit system, earlier they say CBCS, but now choice-based courses they can do, 40%. There is no restriction. But only the biggest challenge is curation of the courses in the program.
Right.
That is what we need to
Right,
address.
sir. Right. Mr. Gupta, your key takeaway, please.
I would say, at least my sense is that the future of higher education in India is exciting. I think we've largely spoken about the good parts of online education. There are lots of not so good parts of online education as well, where both faculty and students have not enjoyed the learning experience, especially if it's been live classes where faculty don't know how to teach online. But I think we are entering a phase where a lot of education will go back to campus and some of it will stay online. And I think this combination is exciting. I think we can upgrade the quality of education that is delivered to students. I think we can make it more relevant for the future of work as well, given what we've spoken about on blended education. Industry is wanting to teach a lot as well. And I've been in many events where academia talks about industry, academia collaboration. Google teaches on the Coursera platform. And in India, 1 lakh students took the Google Data Analytics certificate. So that collaboration is starting to happen because of online education. And then I think finally, if all of this can bring students ready for careers, ready for life, future together. And I think gradually, the challenge which the NEP puts in front of all of us is increasing the gross enrollment ratio of India, increasing the quality of Indian education. I think that can also be met as well. So I think we are entering a very strong, exciting phase where a combination of the physical world and the online world can come together.
Right, right. Thank you, sir. Dr. Bajaj, your final takeaway?
I could see, yes, I agree to Raghav. What he said is, it's very beautiful future education point of view, which we can see. Lot of blended learning, lot of skills, and especially when it starts with, schooling. So I would say, when you are part of school, not in higher education. So in higher education, you are very, very focused to one domain and you don't look at which is not very encouraging. But when the learning and digitization and everything goes to school level, that's very exciting because they look at, the way the students do learn science in the school, it's application oriented. Right. So I could see lot of innovations happening, the entrepreneurship as such, the placement scenario, even in COVID times was excellent. So I was going through an article which was very recently published that why all top CEOs are having, in US also, 40% CEOs are with Indian origin. So what is behind that? Is it that because we have, everybody is conversant with the communication skill or English? Or is it because we are very brainy? So what is the reason? So it's because we have good communication skill and not very good into English. That is also one of the reason. So and then second, the adaptability and acceptability. So with digitization happening, I feel with a lot of things in online, in every domain wherein few of us have started, whether it is finance, whether it is agricultural, whether it is medical, whether it is allied sciences, everywhere the kind of blended learning and interdisciplinary learning is happening. I can see the future is very, very exciting.
Right,
Thank you.
So the final word from Dr. Narang now.
Yeah, I'm looking, the education, like multidisciplinary education, medicine with the music, agriculture with the engineering, research-oriented education, employability, driven education, skill set-driven education. So, the education in large, which is going to help the society and the humanity. So that is the education should be, the future.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much to all of you for your, pertinent points, and over to.
Thank you, Garima. So now I would request Dr. Ravi Gupta, founder and CEO of ELS Technomedia, sir, to please come on the stage and give the token of appreciation to our distinguished speakers, please, sir. Yes, yes. One second, sir. It's open. Yeah. So it's Dr. Preeti Bajaj, Vice Chancellor, Galgotias University, Greater Noida. Thank you, ma'am. Professor Surya Prasad Rao Suvaru, Director, Sharda University, Greater Noida. Please, sir. Yeah.
Can we have a round of applause, please?
Dr. A. Garg, Director, KIET Group of Institutions. Sir. Mr. Raghav Gupta, MD, Director, India and APAC, Course Era. Dr. Davinder Narang, sir is Director, Jaipuria Institutions. Thank you. Sir, please kindly come for group photograph, ma'am. I would request. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, everyone.